What's going on? Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My fellow goats, my fellow unicorns. If you've missed me, well, I've missed you guys too. In this video, I'm going to talk about arguably the most important part of the rank and rent business model, which is niche and city selection. This skill set right here is single-handedly what is responsible for me closing this deal for $1,200 a month, this deal for $1,750 a month, and this deal for $2,200 a month, amongst basically all my other deals. It's also what allowed my student Lindsay to rank one of her rank and rent websites in 3 weeks flat. It's also what allowed another one of my students, Mike, to rank 2 of his websites in some of the most competitive niches to the #1 spot in less than 2 months. Things like remodeling and tree service in a very high populated city in the United States. Okay, so pay attention. This is going to be one of the most critical videos that you guys watch in all of your study on the rank and rent business model. Okay, so more on this after our intro. I'll see you there.
I'm on my way to go quit my job right now.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the series on how to dominate 2023 for the rank and rent lead generation business model. I promised to keep this video a little bit shorter than the last one, which went a little bit long, so I apologize. But for this video number 2, this comes across, this comes to my second major tip for you guys on how to, whether you're in the process of starting or you're having a hard time getting going or getting traction, whatever it is. And that is to only swim in blue oceans. So what does that mean? Well, there's this book called Blue Ocean Strategy, which, if you guys haven't heard of it, basically the concept is that whenever there's something new or any sort of product, service, industry, I guess, there's what you call a blue ocean. It's wide open for the taking. There's tons of customers. There's a need. It solves a problem, all this kind of stuff. And some company, creates a solution, whether it's a product or a service for this problem. And it's a blue ocean. All those customers and prospects that need that solution solved, that problem solved with a solution, become that one person who's swimming in that blue ocean's, leads or buyers, right? And after a little while, when other businesses and companies who might be in similar industries or whatever start catching wind of this product or service, then comes, not necessarily just the knockoffs, but they come, people come in and start targeting that same market, that same blue ocean. And after a while, the waters get bloody and it becomes a red ocean. Okay. And so this book talks about, how to set apart your company or your product or service as, basically creating your own blue ocean market where you can kind of corner a segment of the market and be the, sometimes it's called a category king of that market, to where all the customers come to you. There's no other competitors to deal with. And then how you can stay keeping it as, blue of an ocean for yourself as possible. And so the way I interpret this and apply it to the rank and rent business model is we've got 2 different things that we're researching when we're looking to build a site, right? We've got the city or the market that we're going to target. Okay. Because occasionally you can find like counties. And then when you're in, other places like the UK and Australia, Canada, you can focus, there's different ways that they determine their territories and provinces and stuff like that. So anyway, so let's just call it a market instead of a city. And then you've got the niche or the industry that you're going into, right? And so there's a lot of, conflicting thought on, what's the perfect niche and what's the perfect city and all this kind of stuff. And guys, I will say a much better approach to thinking about this, and the way that I teach it in my program, the way it was taught to me originally from, the myriad of mentors that I've had in this space, is to how to find your own blue oceans. And as I've implemented the strategies myself to, prove out these concepts, I've added in, and I've figured out a lot of things that are cool because they're like other industries I've been involved with that I feel like, you know, if you haven't been involved in those industries, that you wouldn't know. And so it's kind of cool, like with the, you know, a lot of me being me and a lot of different experience of different industries. And, you know, for you know, the first, you know, while of my career, you know, I never held down a job for probably more than, you know, 2 years. So I bounced around from a lot of different jobs, from, you know, technology to construction to, you know, door-to-door sales, to telecommunications. There's all sorts of different stuff. And so learning about these different industries, and then being a part of, you know, some of the investment, you know, firm that I've been a part of, and being able to see all those industries of people coming to, you know, us wanting investment capital and stuff. It's just been really cool. And I've been able to take knowledge from learning about this different stuff and be able to apply it to the rank and rent business model, which I have found as, you know, an amazing vehicle to create cash flow to then go dump into, you know, other business ventures and investments, and, you know, start creating and building, you know, the life that I ultimately want to have, right? The vision for my life that I have. And so, you know, there's some cool strategies that I've found in order to, you know, find these blue ocean cities or markets and these blue ocean industries. Okay. And I want to share a couple of thoughts on this. And if you want a little bit deeper dive, I've got a free booklet in my Facebook group that you guys can join. Tons of people have downloaded it and used it I call it the GOAT Niches book, right? And basically, you know, I give you a list of some of the good niches and then some of the good cities that you could go into. But my main point with all of this is that, okay, if there's, you know, let's say this year there's 10,000 new people that get into rank and rent, and we all start targeting the same niches in different cities, well, soon it's going to be, that niche is going to become so saturated that all of us are going to start having a lot of you know, competition with one another. That's why it's hilarious to me when you know, people who are selling a program or a course or something like that, they come out and they say, hey, you know, go into these 4 or 5, you know, things, and then you've got thousands of people that join that program that are all going into that stuff. And especially when it comes to the paid ad side of things, if you guys don't know how paid ads work, there's always some sort of an auction, a bidding strategy. When you put in, you know, like, it asks how much do you want to bid for this view, if it's a video view, or for impressions, or you know, whatever. And so now if all these people are competing, you know, with each other, all we're doing is driving the auction up. It's like at a true auction, like where it's like, you know, they're auctioning off a car or land or whatever it is, right? Where they're, you know, hey, I'll take it for 5, and then 6, and then 10, and then 12, and then it just, everybody gets bid up and bid up and bid up. That's what's happening when all of us go into the same niche. So rather than just giving you, I mean, in this booklet that you can go download in my free group, you know, you can get some of those, but please, by any means, you know, take the principles that are in that booklet and apply them. And to share a few of them with you in this one, is, first of all, search volume. I think people are paying way too close attention to that than they should, in my opinion. Okay, one of my original mentors, and then I saw this again in the construction company that I worked for. One of my original mentors said, you know, don't pay attention too close to the search volume, because, you know, he had mentioned that he had built some sites that, you know, when you typed into Google Keyword Planner or SEMrush or one of these tools and said, you know, put in the keywords, it said that nobody was searching for it at all, right? And so you might get bummed, and you might say, oh, well, you know, if nobody's searching for it, how am I going to generate any calls? Well, here's the deal. A general web page, just so you guys know, is going to rank for a lot of different keywords, and you may not show up for that main keyword phrase, or you know, searches might not show up for that, but you know, you may have a site that does rank for something similar, because we're building these sites out within a certain industry and a niche, and I'll touch on that here in a little bit. But anyways, you may show up for another one. That's one reason. The other two, the other reason is that these tools, SEMrush and these other, you know, even the Google Keyword Planner isn't like 1,000,000% accurate. Like, it's not 100% accurate 100% of the time. And so one of the big factors that I look into when I'm doing my research is how many current active businesses are in that area doing business, because that tells me how much business there is to go around. If there's a city, let's just say there's a city, and hypothetically, let's say there's, in these tools it says there's zero search, right? You might get discouraged or just discount that as like, okay, I'm not going to go into that. But then if you look how many active businesses are in that area, and you see that there's 8 businesses that all do, let's call it fencing or something, there's one of 2 possible options, and you just kind of have to go with your gut on this. I'm sorry, I don't have like a definitive answer for it, but other than just trust your gut, because your gut often knows like what to do. But there's two scenarios here. Either there's 8 or maybe there's like 1 or 2 like legit fencing companies in this hypothetical situation, and then there's like let's say there's 8 total, and then there's 6 other guys that are just doing like fencing on the side as like a side business, and they've all but they're all like in the area and stuff. And so what that tells me is, okay, there's like enough there's enough business in the area to go around to support two businesses and then some side hustlers. And again, you can try to dive a little bit deeper onto some of this stuff. I mean, like I've gone down some rabbit holes before on trying to investigate if something is good for me to go into or not, with some really out of the box thinking, like looking at social media profiles, looking up on the Secretary of State website to see who owns the business, giving them a call if I need to, looking their social media profile up, seeing, trying to see if, hey, does this guy or gal do this full time, or is it more looking like a side hustle type of a thing based off of if they have any public info available on social media. So I'm definitely outside the box thinking, but to me, it's worth it to go the extra mile to know if I can swim in if it's a blue ocean for me or not. Because here's the deal. I can guarantee you most of the people, except for the ones of you who are watching this video, most of the people in the rank and rent business model, SEO, lead gen game, they're going to see zero search in a local market, and they're going to pass on it. And probably you guys watching this as well, if you've tried this, have probably passed on a lot of these things. But I'll tell you, I absolutely clean house on these types of things. Okay. And the reason it was even like mainly brought to me, and I started like deducing this, was because that construction company I was working for before I ultimately ended up, scaling my business on the side while I was working there, and then ultimately quitting my job, was we were targeting really low population towns, even smaller than what I recommend for most rank and rent businesses. And we built a business in less than 3 years to $16.5 million in revenue by that 3rd year. And that was not like cumulative revenue. That was for that 3rd year. So by the time I ended up leaving, it was just starting kind of their 4th year in business. And I had been with them from, I guess they were like 3 or 4 months incorporated before I joined that company. I was very early on, and ended up building up, a lot of what that company is today, or at least helping with a lot of the different departments and everything. But what we would do is we would strategically focus on these kind of outskirt, areas that were underserved in the products and services that we were offering. We would do mainly, solar energy. It's a big one. We did roofs, we did remodels, we did insulation. Those were kind of our main, main offerings. And so what we did to separate ourselves and to go swim in a blue ocean is, even though our central headquarters was located in a metropolitan area, is we would drive, hour and a half to 2 hours to these areas where no other companies that offered what we were offering would go. So they were, they had a couple of local offerings, but they ultimately, we were a well-established company with, resources to do a good job and crews to do well, on everything that their project entailed. And so it built a ton of trust with people. And, we were going into these towns. They were, 10,000 was one of the areas that I was in charge of. There was a 3,000 population area, a lot smaller, like I said, than what I would even recommend for rank and rent. But again, we built this big company quickly. in a lot of the same industries that we, target or can generate leads for in Rank and Rent. And we did it in areas that, like I'll show on the screen somewhere. I'll show you the search numbers, but it's zero. Okay. So, but that doesn't mean that people weren't willing to buy. Okay. And we generated leads, to be fair, in a lot of different ways. We did Facebook ads as well, Google ads, and then obviously all of our organic SEO. And then, we built a good referral network and everything like that. And so from a company perspective, that does differ a little bit from Rank and Rent, but the principles and the core foundations is what I'm trying to get at. For you guys to dominate in 2023, like this series is about, is find those blue oceans. It doesn't have to be close to where you live, okay? But find those blue oceans to, swim in, and dive deeper on your research beforehand, because I'm telling you guys, there are some diamonds in the rough out there that absolutely can bring you in, an additional, on the low end, $500 a month, right? But up to, $1,500 to $2,000, and even more, right? And for some people, they may even be able to find, some sort of high ticket, perfect opportunity to and just corner yourself as like the lead generator that shows up on all, the search engine results, the maps, Facebook pages, build out those social media assets for your sites and stuff as well, and ultimately be able to corner a market for yourself. Now, let's go ahead and talk about how you would implement this. Okay, is you would more than likely, when you found a market like that is lower population, underserved and everything like that, that allows you to go into those red ocean niches or industries, those, the electricians, the plumbers, the HVACs, the roofing, those are the ones that we would typically stay away from in most markets. You can go into those in these blue ocean cities. Okay. And so if you find a blue ocean city, you can go into the more typically competitive, keywords and industries. Now, on the flip side, if you're going into a market that is, more competitive, more population, typically, depending on, the certain demographics as far as like average, income, per capita and stuff like that, you're generally going to find a lot more competition. That is where you want to implement the strategy of finding a blue ocean niche, which is going to be those obscure niches, those weird ones. Like I've shared a couple of the, the ones that, I've talked about on here before. And in that niche booklet, I give an example of what those look like. Okay. And then this is also where the principle is going to come in of what's called niching down. So niching down is where instead of doing roofs, you do like roof repair, right? Or instead of doing decks, deck building and, deck contractors, you do like deck repair, or even go further down. And I've got a client that does deck staining and painting. And so he pays me $400 a week to send him those leads, because even though he can do all that other stuff, he just wants those specific leads. And that's what you guys have to realize, is when it comes to these obscure niches, you think, like the way our brains naturally think, and this is the way I thought for a long time before I learned this stuff on my own, is that you have to find a contractor that only focuses on deck staining and painting in that. No, but I went to a guy who does all sorts of stuff, and he was just like, yeah, I'll buy those leads from you. Like, those are really easy for me to deploy a crew out onto, to get it done fast, pretty high profit margin. Okay. But it's something that homeowners don't want to do themselves. Oftentimes, I mean, some do-it-yourselfers, like they're going to do everything themselves, right? But he's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll buy those leads from you. So it's not like I was supplying him leads for his entire, company of what he offers, but I was just supplying him leads for that specific, like a category within what he offers. And so that's the other thing that you need to realize, is that you can find lead buyers even in these obscure niches. So if you go into a Los Angeles, California, a Denver, Colorado, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of like the major cities in each, state: Salt Lake City, Utah, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, Houston, Texas, Florida, Orlando, Florida, right? Some of these, just massive cities. try to niche down. And that opens up an entirely new set of niches to go into. And so my point with this video and wrapping up here is that I hear a lot of people complain about rank and rent being saturated, about, you know, it not working anymore, or they want me to give them the perfect niche, as if I'm just going to give them, you know, a niche to go into, and that, you know, the magic words of Zach are automatically going to make them, you know, tens of thousands of dollars a month because I gave them one niche to go into. There's so many other factors that you need to look at. And if you want to know what those factors are, enroll in my program. I've got a free course that outlines some of that you can download and sign up for below. It is free. It's got, you know, kind of the basics just to give you some sort of structured content. But then I do have a paid program that is very valuable, and it is very inexpensive compared to what other people are charging in this space. And so if you find yourself as a beginner and needing a straight path to success in this business model, that's going to be a great one for you. I'll put the link in my Facebook group. It's already in there. So you can join our Facebook group and you can find the link to the course there. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video in this little video series. But I hope this you know, information helps you as you're looking for, you know, the blue oceans to go swim in, whether it's an industry or a marketplace that you're testing out. And, you know, dive deep into that research, guys. That's the most important part. The students that I have that are ranking sites the fastest right now are the ones that have gotten extremely good at the due diligence research part of the process. So I promise you guys, do it. Take the time to do it. It's one of those things that is a very valuable investment of your time. Okay. So with that one, I'll see you in our next video in the series.